The glass wall Josephine Porter's office window provided a stunning view of Chicago's skyline. But that wasn't why she'd requested this specific room when accepting the position at Westwood Innovations. The real value was in its location exactly. 8 steps from Elliot Westwood's office and separated by a glass wall that allowed her to monitor his schedule with military precision. "You want the fishbowl office?" HR had asked, confused. Most executive assistants preferred the privacy of the alcove near the elevator. Perfect visibility, Josephine had replied simply. After 6 years managing executives' lives, she knew efficiency trumped comfort. 3 months into the job, that decision had proven invaluable. Elliot Westwood, 34, bachelor, self-made tech millionaire with a reputation for brilliance. And brutal candor required a specific type of handling. The glass barrier provided the perfect metaphor for how Josephine approached her role, completely transparent professionally, yet maintaining an impenetrable personal boundary. "The Singapore investors are here," Josephine announced, entering his office after a quick knock. "And before you ask, yes, I've prepared the quarterly projections with both conservative and aggressive growth models."
Oh.
Elliot glanced up from his 3-monitor setup, dark eyes narrowing slightly. "The conservative numbers will scare them off, which is why I've arranged for them to tour the R&D floor first. Dr. Patel will demonstrate the neural interface prototype. By the time they reach this office, they'll be too impressed to worry about first-quarter fluctuations." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Well played, Ms. Porter." Josephine nodded, maintaining her professional posture. No returning smile, no small talk. Just competence and boundaries, the formula that had rebuilt her career after the disaster. At Meridian Tech 2 years ago, she refused to think about Mark Donovan now. Her former boss had turned a mentorship into manipulation, a professional relationship into personal hell. The lawsuit had been settled quietly, but the damage to her reputation had followed her. "Difficult to work with," the whispers said. "Too rigid." Let them talk. Rigid boundaries had saved her. "I need the Nakamura contract revisions by end of day," Elliot said, already refocused on his screen. "There, in your inbox." The concerning liability clauses on page 17. He looked up again, this time with genuine surprise. "You read Japanese contract law?" "I had it translated, then verified the translation against 3 precedent cases." Josephine consulted her tablet. "Also, your mother called. Again. She wants to know if you're attending your cousin's wedding next month." Something like annoyance flickered across his face. "Tell her I already told her you're considering it, which buys you 2 weeks before she calls again. I've blocked the date in your calendar as tentative." Elliot leaned back in his chair, studying her with an intensity that made Josephine fight the urge to shift her weight. "You've been here 3 months, Miss Porter, and somehow you've anticipated every question before I ask it. It's almost unsettling."
That's
"My job, Mr. Westwood, most people can't read me." "I don't need to read you. I just need to organize you." A small crease appeared between his brows. "There's a difference?" "Significant. Reading implies emotional investment. Organization is simply efficient systems management." Josephine kept her voice neutral, professional. "The investors will be here in 7 minutes? Your navy tie would be better than the great photographs well for the press waiting downstairs." As she turned to leave, his voice stopped her. "Josephine." She paused, hand on the door. He rarely used her first name. "How do you know which battles I want to fight and which ones I don't?" The question felt too personal, crossing the invisible line she'd drawn. Still, it was professionally relevant. "You fight for the product, not for your ego," she answered. Carefully, everything else is negotiable. Something shifted in his expression: surprise, perhaps appreciation. It made her uncomfortable. "The navy tie," she reminded him, retreating to her glass-walled office where the boundary between them was visible, tangible, safe. That evening, as Chicago's lights glimmered against the darkening sky, Josephine updated her personal rules document. A ritual she performed weekly. Rule number 1 remained unchanged. Never mistake professional intimacy for personal connection, especially with a boss like Elliot Westwood, whose focused intensity could too easily be misinterpreted as something more. Calculated risks, The emergency board meeting wasn't scheduled to end until 9, but Josephine could tell from the raised voices behind the conference room's closed door that it might go much longer. Westwood Innovations stock had dropped 12% after a competitor announced a breakthrough in neural interface. Technology one suspiciously similar to their own proprietary design. "Someone leaked our research," Elliot had growled earlier that morning, pacing her office like a caged predator. "Find out who had access to the Prometheus files." All of them. 6 hours, 42 phone calls, and 1 threatened lawsuit later. Josephine had compiled a comprehensive access log showing every employee who had touched the files over the past 18 months. She'd cross-referenced this against resignation, dates, new employment records, and social media activity. The results sat in a folder on the conference table, and judging by the explosive reaction she'd heard through the door 30 minutes ago, the board had just reviewed her findings. At 10:17 p.m., the door finally opened. Board members filed out, their expressions grim. Several nodded respectfully to Josephine, who remained at her desk despite the late hour. Elliot emerged last, his suit jacket discarded, tie loosened, the top button of his shirt undone. His 5 o'clock shadow had progressed to evening stubble, and his eyes held the hard, distant look she recognized from difficult decisions. "Victor Chen," he said simply, stopping at her desk. Josephine nodded. The brilliant research director who had recruited Elliot from MIT 15 years ago, his mentor, his friend. "The timestamps confirm it," she said quietly. "He accessed the files at 2:14 a.m. on March 7th, copied them to an external drive, and 3 days later, his brother-in-law invested heavily in Nexus Tech." Elliot's jaw tightened. He found what a team of corporate security experts couldn't. They were looking for hackers. "I looked for humans." Josephine hesitated, then added, "I'm sorry. I know he means a lot to you." Something flickered in his. I surprise at her personal comment, perhaps. "The board wants to prosecute." "Of course they do." It's the rational response. "And what's your assessment?" The question caught her off guard. "My assessment isn't relevant to this decision." "I disagree." Elliot leaned against her desk, closer than he typically stood. "You understand systems, including human ones?" "Happens if we prosecute Victor?" Josephine considered carefully. This wasn't just about professional advice. Elliot was asking for something more personal. Still, she could maintain boundaries while providing insight. "You'll win the case, but lose perspective. Victor betrayed you because Nexus offered him research freedom you couldn't. That's the real problem to solve." She met his gaze directly. "And personally, you'll lose the man who taught you everything you know about both technology and business. That matters more than the board realizes." Elliot studied her, his expression unreadable. "You've researched my background. I've researched everything that affects my ability to do my job effectively, including my personal history. Your professional relationships impact company decisions. That makes them relevant." A hint of amusement crossed his features. "Such careful boundaries, Ms. Porter." "Professional effectiveness requires clear parameters. Does it?" He straightened, running a hand through his already disheveled dark hair. "Come with me. I need to think, and I think better with food." 20 minutes later, they sat in a corner booth of a small Italian restaurant several blocks from the office. The owner had greeted Elliot by name and shown them to a private table without hesitation. Josephine noted how the staff treated him with warmth rather than the deference usually shown to wealth. "Interesting." "You're analyzing again?" Elliot said, pouring her a glass of wine without asking. "You come here often, but not for business meetings," she observed, accepting the glass but not drinking. "My father worked construction 2 blocks from here. We'd eat lunch together every Saturday when I was developing my first software prototype." His voice softened with the memory. "Now I own the building where he once installed Windows." The personal disclosure unbalanced her. This wasn't a professional dinner, despite the crisis that prompted it. "Mr. Westwood Elliot," he corrected. "It's after hours. We're eating spaghetti carbonara. I'm about to betray my board's wishes, based partly on your advice. I think we can use first names." Josephine carefully placed her napkin in her lap. "What have you decided about Dr. Chen?" "I'm offering him a choice. Resignation with his research notes intact, and a non-disclosure agreement or public exposure. Elliot twirled pasta around his fork. It gives him dignity while protecting the company. The board won't like it. The board doesn't understand loyalty the way I do. His dark eyes fixed on hers. Do you, Josephine? The question carried weight beyond the immediate context. I understand professional loyalty, yes, just professional. He leaned forward slightly. The way you defended Patricia from accounting when the CFO tried to blame her for the quarterly reporting error. The way you remember every employee's dietary restrictions for company events. That seems more than professional. Heat crept up her neck. Effective team management requires attention to human factors. Elliot actually laughed, a rich sound she'd rarely heard. You have the most elaborate defenses I've ever encountered. I prefer to call them boundaries. And what exactly are you protecting behind those boundaries? The question hit too close to home. Josephine took a deliberate sip of wine, buying time. We should focus on tomorrow's strategy for handling Dr. Chen's departure. Elliot studied her for a long moment, then nodded, allowing the retreat. You're right. But someday, Josephine Porter, I hope you'll answer the question. Later that night, as her taxi navigated Chicago's glittering streets, Josephine updated her rules document. Once again. Under rule number 1, she added a new caveat. Professional insight may occasionally require personal understanding. Exercise extreme caution. She stared at the words, recognizing the danger in what she'd written. It was the first crack in her carefully constructed wall, a calculated risk she wasn't entirely sure was wise. The Tokyo Revelation, the Okura Hotel's conference room, overlooked Tokyo's sprawling skyline, now barely visible through sheets of torrential rain. Typhoon Mihua hadn't been forecasted to hit the city directly, but meteorological predictions had proven disastrously wrong. All flights were grounded, the subway system shut down. And Westwood Innovation's crucial partnership meeting with Takashi Electronics had been postponed indefinitely. Josephine watched Elliot pace near the window, phone pressed to his ear, as he spoke with their pilot, 6 months into her position as his executive assistant. She could read the subtle tells in his posture, the slight tension in his shoulders that signaled frustration, the way his free hand occasionally pushed through his hair when options were dwindling. 2 days minimum, he said after ending the call, turning toward where she sat organizing contingency plans on her tablet. Even after the storm passes, there's a backlog of international flights. I've already extended our hotel reservations and rescheduled the Takashi meeting for Thursday, Josephine replied, making a final notation. I've also moved your quarterly strategy review to a video conference and sent messages to all affected parties. Elliot studied her with that penetrating gaze that still made her uncomfortable after all these months. You don't seem particularly bothered by being stranded in a foreign country during a natural disaster? Panic doesn't improve circumstances, she said simply. Besides, the Okura has excellent disaster protocols and backup generators. We're safer here than attempting to relocate. A faint smile touched his lips. Always the pragmatist. It's served me well, has it? He moved to the small bar in the corner of the conference room, pouring 2 glasses of whiskey. We're effectively trapped here for 48 hours, with nothing productive to accomplish. Your pragmatism can take a brief holiday. He offered her one of the glasses. After a moment's hesitation, Josephine accepted it, though she rarely drank at work events. But this wasn't exactly work anymore, was it? The line between professional obligation and unexpected personal circumstance had blurred. Exactly the type of situation her boundaries were designed to prevent. 2 unexpected detours, Elliot said, raising his glass slightly. The whiskey burned pleasantly as she took a small sip. The Takashi delay actually gives us time to refine the licensing agreement. Their initial terms for the sensory feedback technology were problematic. Josephine. His voice held gentle reprimand. It's nearly 9 in the evening. We're watching a typhoon rewrite the Tokyo coastline, and you're still trying to maintain professional distance. She stiffened. I'm doing my job. Your job doesn't require you to erase your humanity. He set his glass down and leaned against the conference table, closer than strictly necessary. After 6 months, I still know almost nothing about you beyond your extraordinary professional capabilities. By design, she replied carefully. Why? The directness of his question, the genuine curiosity rather than professional interest, created a moment of uncomfortable clarity. For months, their relationship had been evolving beyond the strict parameters she'd established. Late-night strategy sessions had occasionally drifted into personal territories before she carefully redirected them. His offhand comments sometimes held dual meanings she pretended not to notice. The rain pounded against the windows, creating a cocoon of white noise that felt strangely intimate. My previous position ended. Problematically, she finally said. Elliot's expression remained neutral, but his eyes sharpened with interest. I'm aware. The Meridian situation. Surprise flickered through her. You knew? Not initially? I hired you because you were extraordinarily qualified. Later I heard rumors, did some research. He shrugged slightly. Corporate circles are small. Josephine set her glass down, suddenly needing the clarity of sobriety. Then you understand why professional boundaries are non-negotiable for me. I understand why you believe that, he countered. But after working together closely for half a year, don't you think we've established enough trust to move beyond rumors and speculation? The question hung between them, weighted with implications. Outside, lightning illuminated the room briefly, followed by a low rumble of thunder. Mark Donovan was my mentor, she began carefully, surprising herself with the disclosure. He took credit for my strategic initiatives, demanded personal loyalty beyond professional requirements. When I finally objected, he ensured no one in our industry would trust my judgment. Elliot remained silent, giving her space to continue. Settlement included a non-disclosure agreement, but the damage was done. 6 interviews, 6 rejections, until Westwood Innovations. Until me, Elliot said quietly. Till this position, she corrected, maintaining the distinction. He nodded slowly, respecting the boundary even as he tested it, for what it's worth. Donovan's reputation has suffered significantly in recent years. 3 more complaints have emerged. The information settled uncomfortably. That doesn't change what happened, Elliot agreed, moving to the window to watch the storm. His silhouette against the rain-streaked glass created a strangely vulnerable image. My father wanted me to take over his construction business, he said, unexpectedly. He didn't understand technology, but he understood hard work. When I chose a different path, he didn't speak to me for 2 years. The personal revelation caught her off guard. What changed? I failed. A rueful smile crossed his face as he turned back toward her. My first startup collapsed spectacularly. I was 26, broke, and had to move back home. Dad never said I told you so. He just helped me rebuild literally. We renovated houses together for 8 months while I recoded my algorithm at night. Josephine found herself genuinely curious. That's not in any of your official biographies. Success. Stories sell better without the messy middle parts. He returned to the table, refilling his glass. Victor Chen found my research paper 6 months later. The rest is corporate history. And your father. Something softened in Elliot's expression. He watched me build Westwood from nothing. He died 3 years ago. He told me his greatest pride wasn't that I succeeded, but that I failed and got back up. The personal disclosure created an unexpected resonance. Without quite meaning to, Josephine shared, my grandmother raised me with a similar philosophy. Falling isn't failure, staying down is. Smart woman, Elliot said, studying her with new interest. Is she still alive? No, cancer, 4 years ago. I'm sorry, thank you. The simple exchange felt monumental, the first purely personal conversation they'd ever had as the storm raged outside. They talked for hours about family, about failures that had shaped them, about books and foods and places they'd seen. Professional pretenses gradually fell away, revealing to people who had more in common than either had realized. Near midnight, as they stood side by side watching the typhoon's fury gradually subside, Elliot said quietly, "Thank you for letting me see past the glass wall, Josephine." She should have reinstated the boundary immediately. Instead, she replied honestly, "I'm surprised to find I don't regret it." That night, updating her rules document in her hotel room, Josephine stared at rule number 1 for a long time before adding, "Authentic connection may occasionally transcend professional categories. Proceed with caution. but without fear. The amendment felt like both surrender and liberation. Breaking point, the Chicago skyline glittered with early autumn sunlight as Josephine stared unseeing at her computer screen. 3 weeks had passed since Tokyo, and nothing had been the same since their return. On the surface, everything appeared. Normal meetings scheduled, contracts processed, the daily machinery of Westwood Innovations functioning with its usual precision. But beneath that veneer of normality, something fundamental had shifted. It wasn't anything obvious. Elliot remained professional in meetings, maintained appropriate boundaries in front of others. The change manifested in small moments. The lingering glances across conference tables, the brush of fingers when passing documents, the way there. Late-night work sessions now included personal conversations alongside business strategy, and most dangerously, the way Josephine found herself looking forward to those moments. "Ms. Porter, do you have the projection analysis for tomorrow's presentation?" Startled from her thoughts, Josephine looked up to find Natalie Bryant, the company's CFO, standing expectantly at her desk. "Of course," she replied, quickly accessing the file. "I've incorporated the updated manufacturing costs from the Singapore facility." Natalie accepted the tablet with a curious look. "Everything all right? You seem distracted lately?" "Just balancing multiple priorities," Josephine said smoothly, redirecting the conversation. "Have you decided about the expansion timeline?" After Natalie left, Josephine forced herself to confront the uncomfortable truth she'd been avoiding. Her carefully constructed professional boundaries were eroding, compromising the very principles that had rebuilt her career. Worse, she couldn't entirely blame Elliot for the shift. She had participated willingly, even eagerly, in their evolving relationship. The realization demanded action. Before she could reconsider, Josephine drafted an email requesting a meeting with Elliot for the end of the day. The subject line read simply, "Personnel matter. Urgent." At precisely 6:30 p.m., with most employees already departed for the weekend, she knocked on his office door. "Come in," Elliot called, not looking up. From his computer, when the door closed with a decisive click, he finally raised his gaze. Something in Josephine's expression must have alerted him, because his posture immediately changed. It's becoming more attentive. "What's wrong?" She placed a folder on his desk, maintaining formal distance between them. "I'm tendering my resignation." "Effective 2 weeks from today?" Shock registered briefly before his expression hardened into something unreadable. "Explain." "I've been offered a position at Meridian Tech." His eyebrows rose sharply. Meridian, after what happened there. New leadership, new opportunity. "A directorial position in operations management." Elliot leaned back in his chair, studying her with that penetrating gaze that seemed to see through pretense. An impressive advancement, though the timing it's interesting. It's a logical career progression. "Is it?" He stood, moving around the desk to face her directly. Without the barrier between them, Josephine found herself fighting the urge to step back.
Oh.
Or is it running away? The direct challenge made her spine stiffen. Making a professional decision based on career advancement opportunities? Bullshit. The rare profanity hung between them. "You're running because of what happened in Tokyo, because something changed between us, and it frightens you. That's inappropriate, no? What's inappropriate is using a competing job offer to avoid addressing what's really happening here." His voice remained controlled, but intensity radiated from him. "At least have the courage to be honest about why you're leaving." The confrontation was exactly what Josephine had hoped to avoid. She tried another approach. "The situation has become ... complicated. This is the cleanest resolution." "Clean for whom?" "You walk away to another company. I lose the best executive assistant I've ever had, not to mention someone I've come to." He stopped abruptly. The unfinished sentence hung in the air between them, charged with implications neither had directly acknowledged until now. "Someone you've come to what, Elliot?" The question escaped before she could stop it. For a moment, he seemed on the verge of answering. Instead, he turned away, moving to the window that overlooked the city. "Meridian will exploit your talents without appreciating your value. They'll take everything you offer and give nothing in return. That's not your concern, isn't it?" He turned back, something vulnerable now visible beneath his controlled exterior. "After everything we've shared, after all the trust we've built, Can you honestly say we're just employer and employee? The question struck at the heart of her dilemma.
No.
That's all we can be.
Why?
Because anything else compromises everything I've worked to rebuild. The words burst out with unexpected emotion. My professional reputation, my independence, my ability to be seen as more than just... She stopped herself. More than just what? Elliot pressed, moving closer. Josephine forced herself to meet his gaze directly. More than just a woman sleeping her way to advancement. That's what they said after Meridian, even though nothing happened. Imagine what they'd say if there was actually something to talk about. Understanding dawned in his expression. You're worried about perception. I'm worried about reality. Power imbalances don't create healthy relationships. Then let's eliminate the imbalance. He spoke with sudden decisiveness. Take the operations director position here at Westwood. You're more than qualified, and we've been looking to fill that role for months. The unexpected proposal momentarily silenced her. That's not a solution. It's a complication. It's an opportunity professionally and personally. His voice softened. Unless I've completely misread the situation, and there's nothing personal between us worth exploring, the challenge was clear, forcing Josephine to confront the truth she'd been avoiding. There was something between them, something that had grown steadily despite her carefully constructed boundaries. Something that terrified and exhilarated her in equal measure. Even if I took another position here, the history remains. People would talk. People always talk, Elliot countered. The question is whether we let their speculation dictate our choices. It's not that simple. Actually, it is. Closed. The distance between them. Close enough that she could see the determination in his eyes. Do you want to leave, Josephine? Not because of appearances or professional concerns, but because you genuinely want to walk away from whatever this is. Becoming... The directness of the question stripped away her prepared defenses. In the silence that followed, the truth crystallized with painful clarity. She didn't want to leave. But staying meant risking everything she'd fought to rebuild after Meridian. Need time, she finally said. Something like hope flickered in his expression. Take the weekend. Think about the operations position. It's a legitimate offer, regardless of other considerations. The careful phrasing acknowledged the boundaries she still needed. And if I still choose to leave, then I'll accept your resignation. His voice carried quiet certainty, but I hope you don't. As Josephine left his office, the folder containing her resignation letter remained on his desk, neither accepted nor rejected. Like everything between them, it existed in a state of possibility, waiting for her to decide which reality she truly wanted. That night, staring at her rules document, Josephine made no amendments. Instead, she created a new document titled simply, Truths, and wrote a single line. The safety of perfect boundaries comes at the cost of genuine connection. The words offered no solution, but acknowledging them felt like the first step toward an answer she wasn't yet ready to embrace. Rewriting the rules Monday morning arrived with crystalline clarity, both in the autumn sky and in Josephine's mind. The weekend had passed in a blur of soul-searching pro-con lists and long walks along Lake Michigan's windswept shore. By Sunday evening, she had reached her decision now. Standing before Elliot's office door, resignation letter in one hand and an alternative proposal in the other. She took a steadying breath before knocking. "Come in," his voice called. Elliot stood by the window, silhouetted against the morning light. He turned as she entered, his expression carefully neutral, though she caught the flicker of apprehension in his eyes. "You've made your decision," he said, not a question. Yes. Josephine placed both folders on his desk. Two options. My resignation or my terms for staying. Curiosity replaced the guarded look as he reached for the second folder. Opening it, he scanned the contents, eyebrows rising slightly. Operations Director, reporting directly to the board rather than to me. Clear disclosure to HR about our personal relationship should it develop. In a public announcement about your promotion that emphasizes your qualifications and previous experience, he looked up. You've thought this through, thoroughly. These terms protect your professional reputation, but they don't address the fundamental question. He set the folder down. What do you actually want, Josephine? The directness of his question demanded equal honesty. Josephine had rehearsed this moment countless times over the weekend, yet now found herself momentarily wordless. Oh, I want to stop being afraid, she finally said. Afraid of repeating past mistakes, afraid of what others might think. Risking a heart I've kept carefully guarded. She met his gaze steadily. I want to see if what we've started is worth rewriting my rules for. Something transformed in Elliot's expression, the careful reserve giving way to genuine emotion. He crossed the room, stopping just short of touching her. And if it isn't, he asked quietly, then we'll have failed with integrity rather than succeeded through compromise. The tension between them shifted, crackling with possibilities neither had allowed themselves to fully acknowledge until now. I accept your terms, Elliot said, his voice low and certain.
All of them.
Later that afternoon, as Chicago's business district hummed with activity, Josephine stood in her new office, no longer separated from Elliot by a glass wall, but connected by something far stronger than professional obligation. Her rules document remained on her tablet, a reminder of lessons hard learned. But beneath rule number 1, she had added a final amendment. The most valuable boundaries are not walls to keep others out, but foundations upon which authentic connections can safely be built. It wasn't an ending, but a beginning one, written not in fear, but in the courage to risk imperfection for something genuine.